Hello, good evening. Welcome to News Night here on Metro Television. My name is Bridget Otu. Thank you very much for joining us. We have some compelling stories for you tonight. Let's begin with the topical ones. Parliament.
That he borrowed and he borrowed irresponsibly.
And saves Ghana from going bankrupt as it approves a $750 million bailout loan agreement after Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta's plea. On corruption, and Ghana Police Service still the most corrupt institution among 23 institutions sampled in a joint UN and Ghana Statistical Service last survey. How do we stem this canker? Founder of the John Evans Atta Mills Institute, Koku Anyudaho, denies desecrating the body of late Professor John Evans Mills's tomb, calling the bluff of the minority's threat to sue him. In sports, head coach of Asante Kotoko, Dr. Prosper Nate Ogum, resigns. On the international front, Mali's military government orders spokesperson of the United Nations mission in Mali to leave the country in 3 days. Hello again, and remember we're streaming on Twitter at Metro TV GH. We're on Facebook. It's at Newsnight and at Metro TV Ghana. Let's begin our very first story. And despite the initial setbacks, Parliament has finally approved a $750 million loan agreement with the Afrexim Bank for funding, infrastructure projects and budget support. The loan is part of a $1 billion facility the government is seeking to shore up its reserves as well as to pay for several infrastructure projects across the country. The minority had initially kicked against the approval of the facility until it was made to understand that the economy will run into bankruptcy if the House fails to approve the loan facility.
Mr. Speaker, maturity period. This country, in the hands of Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, is suffering from a debt overhang. That debt overhang is going to stagnate growth of the economy, and is going to further worsen cost of living for Ghanaians and standards of living. Because, as indicated by the ranking member, how can you spend 127% of your revenue on debt service and spend 13 billion on debt service? What is his interest in borrowing? That he borrowed and he borrowed irresponsibly. But Mr. Speaker, when you come to paragraph 7.5, and this is my concern, according to the 2021 debt management report issued by the Ministry of Finance, about 3 billion will be due in 2024. So in 2024, this economy must brace itself for 3 billion to service debt. Where are we going to find that money? But even more worrying is that 1.5 billion of the country's liabilities will also fall due in 2025. Probably, as I said, if it doesn't go early, he will no longer be the Minister for Finance. He's deferring more of these obligations and burdens to the future. That is why we are saying that there must be a limit to borrowing.
The negotiations for this facility, the Speaker, started way back, several months ago. So for those of them who are saying that, oh, this is the occasion by the demonstration that happened last week, it cannot be accurate. It's an unfortunate statement. But of course, the Speaker, we are here looking for 750 million, and I believe that the House would rise in unison to approve of this facility.
Say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The House has adopted the resolution subject to the amendments offered by the Honourable Ranking Member.
Right, let's go to our video wall and give you details of the loan agreement and the reasons assigned. Now, So Ghana economic, we're facing economic crisis and details of Ghana's loan facility with the Afrexim Bank and justification of government's action, as in the reason for going for the loan. The execution of the loan agreement would provide the needed resources to support the implementation of some critical government projects and provide the needed foreign exchange to shore up the reserve position of the Bank of Ghana and support foreign exchange management. That's the first one. And the use of the proceeds would be used to finance critical infrastructure-related projects in sectors such as roads, energy, railway, and health, as captured in the 2022 budget. The Minister of Finance explained to the committee that the approval of the facility is urgently needed to avoid the country going bankrupt and help the country meet its obligations. He indicated that Ghana has, over the past recent years, accessed financing from the international capital markets and the domestic bond market to support the implementation of its budget. However, the international capital market is not avoidable to Ghana this year as a result of the downgrade of the country's credit rating by international rating agencies, and the government's intention to raise funds from the domestic bond markets did not also yield the desired results. Consequently, the economy is presently challenged with rising inflation, rising interest rates, exchange rates, depreciation, and increasing energy cost. The challenges are further exacerbated by the rapidly dwindling reserves of the Bank of Ghana, which has declined from $9 billion to about $3 billion. So with a monthly of $600 million reserves to be exhausted in a few months, if urgent steps, this from the finance minister, that's our reserve $600 million, if urgent steps are not taken to shore up the country's reserves, the minister further indicated that there is an urgent need for the government to secure the $750 million loan to help shore up the reserve position of the Bank of Ghana to avoid the country defaulting on its international commitments and to avoid the country moving into insolvency. So those were the red lines that the finance minister was there. Again, the minister explained the facility may seem expensive on the face of its terms, but it's a reflection of the market's overall condition in Africa, as evidenced by the cost of at which many African countries borrow from the international markets. I was to speak to the Dean of University of Cape Coast, Professor John Gachi, on this approval. A very good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. Good evening, Prof. So we'll try and get...
and thank you for having me.
Right, Prof. So I remember, a couple of weeks ago, the Speaker had halted this particular one because they wanted the finance minister to come in and give them reasons, the expenditure for COVID-19. So this was halted. Now it's back. The 250 did not come, 750 come. Where are we now? Is this the IMF before the IMF? And what will this do?
Well, I think the situation is very clearly indicated in what you posted earlier on.
Right.
The economy is heading towards bankruptcy. There are a lot of repayment that is due very soon.
Right.
And if we don't have any money on the table, we'll get into a default, and that default will have more precarious effect on the economy of Ghana. And I believe that is the reason why the minority in Parliament focus on the $750 million, bearing in mind that we have some debt that the government want to procure in the year, which have been approved by Parliament. And so long as the 750 million is within the approval given by Parliament earlier, and looking at the dire situation we find in terms of near default and rapidly depletion of the reserve that we have, I believe that is the reason why the approval was given.
But Prof, I want to quote the minister's last night, where he says that the minister explained that the facility may seem expensive on the face of its terms, but it's a reflection of the market's overall conditions in Africa, as evidenced by the cost. So how bad are we? I mean, that we have to be faced with such rather unfavorable conditions, and yet we're taking it anyway.
Yes, it's because we have no choice. We are desperate Therefore, even if we are going in for very high interest rate with some conditions that are very harsh, so long as that will help us to avoid default within the next few weeks, that will be good for the country, because the cost of default will be higher than the high interest that we are going to bear. So that is the choice the government has made.
But
And
Prof,
again,
aren't you
we have
worried?
gotten to, yes, we are worried, but you need to choose, an option, and the option is to save the country from being classified as a default country, because that has more precarious, harsh and adverse market conditions and investor confidence issues for the country. So that is what the country has chosen, even though it is not the best under normal circumstances.
But Prof, we're nearing HIPIC.
There is nothing like HIPIC right now. HIPIC is actually a package provided by the IMF and World Bank.
Right.
There is no support that anybody is going to give us. There is no debt forgiveness. There's no debt cancellation. There is no clear attempt by any institution to provide us a cushion to support uplifting our brothers and sisters who are in vulnerable situation. So yes, if you look at the debt to GDP ratio, look at the fiscal vulnerability ratios, we are far, far above HIPIC. But HIPIC, let's bear in mind, is a package. That package is not available to us. We are just in a very difficult and chaotic fiscal situation that has actually had some negative effect on Bank of Ghana effectiveness. The reserve position of Bank of Ghana has reduced very fast from 9 billion to 3 billion. This is a management issue. That shows that we have not managed the economy well over a period of time.
Okay. Prof, we want to thank you here for speaking to us on this, and we'll definitely get in touch with you on some other issues. That was Professor John Gachi there. And to another very topical issue that we're dealing with in this country, and the founder and chief executive of the John Evans Atta Mills Institute, Koku Anyudoho, has denied not informing members of the late president's family, President Professor John Evans Atta Mills' family, of works on his tomb. And the former aide also called the bluff of the minority in parliament who threatened to sue him.
Apparently, a group calling itself Atta Mills Institute, that the family doesn't recognize, and Coastal Development Authority have gone to break this grave of President John Evans Atta Mills. They have removed the tomb, and what they've done is they claim that they are rebuilding it. Now, my question is this: we have traditions. Why would you go and touch somebody's grave without informing the family? Now, the question I want to ask is this: now that you've gone to touch it, is the body still in that grave?
Brother of one of Ghana's presidents, Sam Atta Mills, accusing Koku Anyudoho and the Coastal Development Authority of tampering with the tomb and the body of the late President John Evans Atta Mills. However, speaking exclusively to Metro News, the former aide of the late president and the chief executive officer of the Atta Mills Institute, Koku Anyudoho, denied the accusations leveled against him by Samuel Atta Mills, saying his assertions are politically motivated. Koku Anyudoho also insisted he informed the family of the late president.
Conference yesterday. Apart from Samuel Atta Mills, do you see any family there? Was it not politicians? So they want to play politics with the death of President Mills. I don't want to play politics with it. For me, I'm in service to God and country. Lots of the members of the family. But because of respect for each and every one of them, I will not mention names. I will not mention names.
How do you respond to allegations that the body of the late president has been exhumed from the grave?
How? Even in our own small ways, as families, as groups, as organizations, Don't we do tombstones to remember the dead? And when we are doing it, do we exhume bodies? Do we? We don't. That's all we have done.
The former aide of the late president also called the bluff of the minority who threatened to sue him for his involvement in the ongoing renovation of the Asumdwe Park.
How do you sue me for building a state monument? Since when did it become illegal for an NGO to collaborate with government for a good cause? Since when? What are they called? NGOs? So we can't all be in government. So it's non-governmental. And you're working with government and it's a crime. That fake memorial heritage. Tell them to go and build their library in Cape Coast. If they really want to uphold the heritage of the president, the late president, they should go and build the Cape Coast Library and stop disturbing my equilibrium.
According to him, he cannot be sued for working for the state. The Asumdwe Park is currently closed and undergoing renovations. The park is expected to be opened to the public on the 26th of July 2022.
Right, and we're staying on this very subject as we are expecting some sort of standoff on the day of the unveiling of the tomb or the relaunch of the tomb, because in Ghana, different cultures observe different rituals and traditions in relation to their dead family or loved ones. One thing that's not very clear is which protocol overrides each other, and when it comes to rights, especially for a statesman as against a cultural norm. And this issue has become relevant due to what's happening around the erection of a tombstone for the late former president, John Evans Atta Mills, and especially following comments by his brother, who's MP for KEEA, Samuel Atta Mills, that the family is not aware of the construction that's leading to a desecration of the resting place of his brother. And to understand this, we have a historian and cultural expert who's also a lawyer, Yawanoche Frimpong. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. So I have listened to Mr. Kokoanyidoho, yes, and I've listened to the MP as well. And he says he has absolutely no problem with what they are doing. What he doesn't understand is why there was no respect, invitation extended to the family before you touch anybody's tomb. Were they wrong in not contacting the family, especially when you're touching the tomb of whether a statesman or of a statesman, let's say of a statesman, let's just keep it at that. I'll ask the previous. Were they wrong?
Well, I believe that Mr. Anyidoho and his team, if they are wrong, that one would have been committed against the state and not his family. And when I say his family, I mean the family of the late president. And by explanation, I need to say that we all belong to the state. And so the state has fundamental interest in us. And putting it in a layman's language, I would say that we are all properties of the state. Below the state comes the family. And so if at the time of the death of the president, and I mean Professor John Atta Mills, the government, after doing whatever it wanted to do with it, like families and whatever, had decided to give the body to the family, that one would have become the family's property. Even there, at any time, the state would have the right to take back the mortal remains. But in this case...
Does the mortal remain belong to the state or the family?
To the state, because the state, they do not relinquish its rights in it.
So the state, essentially, I just want to put it in a layman's voice. So in essence, the state owns the body of Professor John Evans Atta Mills.
The body, and I will extend it. Explain. The state owns the body. And so where it is now, if anybody wants to do anything with it, like Mr. Anyidoho is explaining that they were trying to refurbish the place, the consent, authorization, and concurrence of the state is what is needed. And if he has acquired that, period.
The family says they needed to perform certain rites as culture, culturally
allowed.
No
culture here. And I said that if the body had been given to the family, it would have been their property. And so anybody wanting to go and visit that place or do anything, that person would have first to see the family. And by extension, let's talk about that of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. You know, he was buried in his village in Crawford.
But we understand there were rites that were performed before he was moved to the mausoleum. It wasn't, they just didn't go there and dig it because it's Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, we own him, so they just picked it and then relocated it.
Because initially it belonged to the family.
But everybody belongs to a family.
But
by virtue of service, that's why you become the property of the state.
No. From the very word go as you are born.
So I'm for the state. The state can do with me as they like.
It's for the state, not to do bad things to you, but any positive thing, because even the state...
Then make me understand, of what essence is family?
The family.
Yes. If you are called family, no respect as to what happens to their loved one, then of what essence is family then?
When we talk about rights, we are talking about a hierarchy. And I'm saying that with specific reference to the citizens of the republic, properties of the republic, as we sit here, the state can decide to compulsorily acquire this, and the state will go ahead to do that. Okay. And I'm saying that because the state did not relinquish its interest in the mortal remains of the president.
Because they preserved it at a park,
at a certain park. Right. That place belongs to the state. And so Kweku Anyi-Doho would need the consent of the state, permission of the state to do whatever it wants.
Right. So I want us to take it step by step. So it means that when Prof. Mills died, if the family had said we would bury him and they chose a place for him, it would be for the family.
No.
Until he's moved to a different state.
No. When he died, if the family had requested for it, and indeed they did, I'm saying that the state has a superior interest. The state said no. Just as when Rollins died, the family wanted the mortal remains, and the state said no. When Kwame Nkrumah died, initially, the whole thing was given to the family because he had stated that in his will. But whatever you state in your will with reference to your dead body is only a death wish.
Okay.
The family can decide to respect it or not. But between the family and the state, that of the state is higher. So in Nkrumah's case, after 20 years, the state decided to relocate the grave to Accra. And please, to conclude, if anybody wants to enter the mausoleum of Kwame Nkrumah, you don't go and see the family at Nkrofo. It belongs to the state.
Okay.
And if the family members want to...
No, you're not done. What I want us to do, I want us to project, there are two programs happening on the same day. There's an invitation out with the President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And then there's another one from the Atta Mills Memorial Heritage, of which the family are board members. So we'll project the two programs on our wall so you have a look at it. Now, the one which involves the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, will happen at 9 a.m. or will start at 9 a.m. And then the one by the John Evans Atta Mills Memorial Institute, or the Memorial Heritage, will happen from 11. So they say 9:30. This one includes his brothers, his two brothers who are alive and sister. So he has three brothers left. There were 6. 3 have died, 3 are left. And so this is their program, and it's happening on the same day at the same venue. So this is a place to look to. So on 22nd of July, the family says they will hold a press conference at 9:30 a.m. 19th July, press conference will happen, which is, today is 20th, right?
Today's 20th.
Yeah, today's 20th. So this should have happened yesterday, which they did. It was actually in Parliament. I saw that. And then 22nd, the Muslim prayers in remembrance of President John Evans Atta Mills. And this is where the issue would happen. 22nd, there's a program there with the President of the Republic. They said they were not invited for the program as well. And then at 8 a.m. next day, which is the 23rd, John Evans Atta Mills Memorial Hockey Tournament. We know the President loved hockey. And so they're going to go to the National Hockey Pitch to host a program there. 24th is we'll do the wreath laying ceremony and memorial service for the President John Evans Atta Mills by the NDC at the Asomdwe Park, which is near Osu. And then 26th, also 10th anniversary commemorative lecture with lawyer Chachuchi Kata, Chairman Anoto Sribuo, Chairman who's the Council of State, and at the Accra International Center. So this is their program, right? But the one that is supposed to happen, this is the one with the state. President Nana Addo Dankwa, the President of the Republic, requests the pleasure of the company of, then your name is there, to the 10th anniversary Thanksgiving and memorial service for the late President John Evans Atta Mills. The unveiling of a tombstone and commissioning of the Asomdwe Park is 24th July. Okay, so 24th July 2022. Can we have the other program back? 24th July 2022. All right, so they are also hosting the 24 July, 10th anniversary wreath laying ceremony. The same day, but they say 12:30, but the president only starts now. So I wanted you to have a look at what is happening here. Two different programs happening on the same venue. What do you see happening here?
I don't think it will create any problem because, as I've already stated, the body belongs to the state, so the state will treat it the way it lies, and it does not owe any obligation to anyone with reference to how the state decides to do things, and specifically the body of John Evans Atta Mills. But I believe that the state would accord some respect to their family by way of not allowing a clash to happen over there. But
what does the state lose by inviting the living brothers and sisters or family of the late president if they're doing a program like that? Not a single invitation has been extended.
It's a matter of courtesy. It's a matter of courtesy.
So they don't regard the living...
Not that they don't regard. It's a matter of courtesy.
They feel disrespected. They feel like they have been neglected, and the state has taken over. And you said they have the right to do so. They've taken over and handed it over to a man that they wouldn't even want to sit with.
They are not the only people complaining. I know that Nkrumah's family is always also complaining all the time that they feel neglected, the fact that they are isolated. This was somebody they could have kept over there so that everybody in the world will come to Nkrofo. And the government says no. And I can assure you that even if Nkrumah's closest family want to visit the mausoleum, they would need to pay courtesy to the state first. Otherwise, they will not be allowed there because that place is state property and the body as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, lawyer Anoche Frimpong. It's always a pleasure to have you here. He's a historian and a lawyer saying that the state has the overriding right to decide what it wants to do with the body or the tomb of the late President, Professor John Evans Atta Mills. Because first of all, we are all properties of the state. And if the state wants or cares or decides to extend the courtesy, in which case, in this very case, the family says the state has failed to extend them that courtesy of being part of the ceremony. And so they are also having their own ceremony. Same day that the president will be there. We'll have to stay with Metro Television because we will be covering this and see what happens on the day when the president will be there to unveil the tombstone. And then the family and the NDC will also be there to lay wreath. Let's continue with the rest of our story here. In relation to this, because the Coastal Development Authority says the body of the late former President John Evans Atta Mills is still in his grave, reacting to concerns of the minority in Parliament that the body has been tampered with. Deputy Chief Executive Kofi Kakari Bonzi says the weight of the concrete mounted on the tomb even makes it impossible for anyone to tamper with it.
Deputy CEO of the Coastal Development Authority says they were instructed by President Akufo-Addo to prioritize the renovation of the burial grounds of the late Professor Mills.
We see monuments as part of economic and cultural monuments that impacts on the people of the Coastal Development Zone as well as the people of Ghana. So this particular monument were directed by the President, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, I think upon the appeals of an institution called Atta Mills Institute to renovate the Asumdue Park. So we did a sword cutting in 2020.
He said the authority liaised with relevant state institutions in charge of state monuments before embarking on the exercise in 2020. The scope of work done so far included the redesigning and construction of ICT lab, library, cafeteria, 700 meters fence wall, and many others.
And for the past 2 years, this is what we have done so far. The scope of work included the redesign and construction of ICT lab, a library, cafeteria, and artifacts buildings. We have completed that one. We have also completed the fencing of the entire area. We have construction of concrete shed and replacement of alucobond panels over the tomb of the late president. We have completed. Construction of fence wall, I've reiterated that. Construction of entrance for general public and the VIP completed. paving of 50-meter walkway to and around the tomb completed, asphalting of driveway to the general entrance. Currently, work is ongoing. I just returned from the site. Landscaping of the general area around the tomb to make it very attractive. Work is ongoing over there. So this is what we have done for the past 2 years, and we are putting final touches to it so that we can hand it over to the presidency for them to commit.
Right. And so news came out that the Ghana Police Service remains the most corrupt institution, and most people aren't surprised. When we come back from the break, we'll share details with you. Right, and this story, after the story, will bring you a series of, what else their services. And a survey conducted by the Ghana Statistical Service with other stakeholders in the fight against corruption has ranked, again, the Ghana Police Service as the most corrupted institution among the 23 sampled. This is contained in a research conducted by the outfit on corruption in Ghana, people's experiences and views earlier today.
Experiences and Views Survey Report is hereby launched.
We'll bring you details of that, but let's look at what else is contained in this report that ranks the Ghana Police Service as the most corrupt institution in Ghana. So the scope of bribery, it's bribery and corruption, give and take. So 26.7% of the adult population were told paid a bribe to a public official in 2021. And they looked at urban areas, rural areas, and 26.7. So these are the regions. So look at that. The Western North region has 53.7% of adults who paid or were asked to pay a bribe in the 12 months preceding the service. So the last 12 months, they looked at the regions. Let me go to Greater Accra. Interesting, Greater Accra, about 30.2% of the people said they had paid some form of bribe in the last 12 months. Ahafo says 47.0%, Northeast 41.0%. Bono, let me go to the northern region here. OT, let's look at OT, 27.1%. Volta, Ashanti, so the lowest is Bono East, 11.8%, 14.5%, that's the Savannah. Volta, 19.1%, 20.1% in Ashanti. I'm surprised at the Greater Accra figure here, which says 30.7%, but Western North, 53.4%. And a lot of the officers they engage are police officers. They are always interacting with the public, and that's why they mostly top. And 6 out of 10 bribes. How the bribe works, this is the structure of it. So 6 out of the 10 bribes paid to public officials are requested directly by those. In other words, either they stop you and say, Master, with the drivers, drivers and the police, there's no talking. As soon as they stop, you just stretch your hand and you give, there's 5 cedis, 10 cedis. I don't know these days what the minimum is, whether it's 20 cedis. But they will slap you if you give them 1 Ghana cedi. So they don't want to see the red nose. So 5 Ghana cedis may be minimum. But that's what is happening. It's terrible, but it's happening. And the direct request is 59.4%. In other words, more than 50% of officers are asking bribe directly. Give me money or else courts. 84.8%. 9 out of bribes are paid in the form of cash. Wow. 9 out of 10 bribes are paid in the form of cash. And a total of about 5 billion, I think we should put this on the screen, 5 billion cedis was paid in cash bribes to public officials in 2021. 5 billion cedis was paid to public officials in the form of bribe, cash. Well, look at the male-female population, and the share of male public officials who solicit or take bribe when interacting with their citizens is roughly twice, that's of female public officials. So male are more likely to take bribes than women. Women are shy, so they don't do direct. If you even beg them, they might not take it, right? And 2.6% of women were asked for sexual favors, a terrible one here, sexual favors when interacting with public officials. So either for jobs, for promotion, for opportunities, women are always asked to give something their body. And it's interesting that this survey is bringing it out to stem it out. 4 out of 10 successful candidates for posts in the public sector admitted using either nepotism, bribery, or both to improve their chances of recruitment. 4 out of 10 successful candidates for posts in the public sector admitted using either nepotism, bribery, or both to improve their chances. In other words, you may be qualified for it, but if you don't pay, you will not get the opportunity. And 1 out of 10 citizens say they were also offered a bribe in the last 10 months. So like I said, we'll be breaking it down. This is News Night. We don't have a lot of time to tell you everything, but we will break it down in our subsequent bulletins. But let's see. So these are the officials who were named in the survey. So who are they? Ghana Immigration Service, GRA, Lands Commission, DVLA, Passport Agency, prosecutors, judges, and magistrates. Remember, they were caught taking goats in that Anas Arimio, Anas undercover reports. Judges, magistrates, prosecutors are all here. National Road Safety Authority, prison officials, MMDAs, ministries, people paid to have their contracts approved. GRA, Ghana members of the armed forces, embassy, public officials, public utility officials, embassy and or consulate, teachers, doctors, executive branch of government, elected and social security elected, and all of these people, and Ghana police managed to beat all of them and take the #1 position. Okay, so that's just about it. Like I said, we'll definitely be giving you more. But this is just to give you an idea of exactly what is happening in this country. And we'll go on Zoom and speak to Edem Senanu. Edem Senanu is the Director of Citizen Movement Against Corruption. Very good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, are you surprised that Ghana police topped? And also the names that you saw here with judges, immigration, GRA, is any of the names that surprise you? I mean, the consulate here did surprise me, though.
Well, not surprising that we have different categories of groupings in this.
Right.
I think what hit me was the estimated 5 billion. I was like,
right.
Wow.
Right.
We know it's going on, we know it's bad, but this suddenly puts a figure to it and it hits you that really the country is bleeding.
Mm. And let's talk about the Ghana Police Service. They seem to be at top, at least in previous ones I have seen that. Is it because of the constant regular interaction with the public? And why do they keep, is it that the reports don't shame them enough? What can we do to shame them enough to leave the top?
I think it will be a combination of factors. Certainly because the police are out there, and I'm sure if they disaggregated the data, would find that perhaps the MTTU division of the police service is the one where you would have a lot of disengagement and issues going on, and perhaps also the police stations. But yes, obviously, because they're engaging people a lot more, and also because we have not robustly dealt with this in the past. You see, all the research shows that when you set good precedents, in other words, find people culpable, jail them, sanction them, collect their money, collect their properties, shame them, name them, gradually there's a sense that you can't get away with this. It's high risk, it's low gain. But to the extent that we've not done enough of that, I mean, all these high profile cases that have come up, very little action or traction, very little sanctioning or prosecution and jailing, people think they can get away with it.
So then what? Do we throw our hands in the air and, do nothing? Because you saw the figure, 5 billion cedis in a year.
I think that we need to be a lot more innovative in coming up with mechanisms and strategies. I would like to see a fast-track corruption court where issues that are brought up, people are sent and quickly. I mean, we need to understand that this is a big issue for us and you want it quickly prosecuted rather than it takes forever, joins the line of whatever cases are in court. I think that's important. I think it's also good that we're having a lot more investigation. I think we need a lot more investigative journalism going on, like the likes of Manasseh, Anas, and not just to the extent of the bulk figures, but naming and shaming specific persons. I mean, the more that begins to happen, then you're not sure whether somebody has walked into your office with a pen that is recording, or, public officers are going to be more cautious. So we need a lot more investigative journalism, recordings, and then making it high profile, letting the people go through the court processes, get them jailed, and working together, civil society, anti-graft agencies, media. If we push the game forward in terms of making sure that we are very incisive in identifying who is being corrupt and making sure that they face the full rigors of the law.
You sound hopeful, but we saw the video Anas brought out. Judges, magistrates, they were all in there. How do you expect fast track? Special prosecutor is struggling. And we have seen people who were in Anas's video, in fact, in Manasseh Azuri's video, both hands taking it, and we're all cleared. How can you be so hopeful when all of this is happening with no action taken?
Well, it's unfortunate, but society seems to, sometimes you go downhill to get a point where everybody agrees that we have to do something. And you don't want to get to a point where it's like a revolution or something. But people...
Okay. Senanu was just wrapping up about the corruption and how he is hopeful despite the daunting challenge that confronts persons who fight corruption. We know what happened with Daniel Domelovo and the likes who try to fight corruption in the country. We're taking a break. We'll be back with business. We've eaten a bit of their time, but we'll be back with business. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to Newsnight Live on Metro TV. My name is Winston Taki. Now to a false business story. Ghana has been ranked second among countries with the highest debt default rates in 2022, according to Bloomberg.
Well, I mean, when a country going through a situation of debt distress or having a high level of debt is something that is not really a comfortable thing. Currently, Ghana, we are not performing well on our current account balances. Our fiscal balance is also really bad as a debt as a percentage of our GDP. Broadly, as you said, our debt to GDP is also skyrocketing, projecting about 84 or so by end of the year. What this really means, I mean, heading towards a situation of debt distress, is that, and I hope it doesn't happen. If it happens like that, then the international capital markets will be completely shut. In other words, nobody will be willing to give Ghana more money again. And that potentially could have devastating consequences on consumers, especially being so much import dependent. What that going to mean in terms of investor confidence? Who is going to put their money in the country, knowing that government owes, potential of them paying back is not there. Inflation will keep rising until we find a solution to this. Possibly being exporting less than we are importing. Okay. And that, apart from the consumer confidence and the impact, is going to having to pay for high prices for items. It could also slow down growth as investor confidence goes down. People either take away their money where they have invested when it matures. Investors who are foreign might repatriate their funds abroad, try to invest in another country outside Ghana. And those within Ghana might equally move abroad or hold on to their resources rather than investing in Ghana. I mean, as we stand, every one Ghana we get from our revenue generates 50 pesos, over 50 pesos goes into debt.
Now, the Ghana Statistical Service says producer inflation for industry was 38.0% for June 2022. Government statistician Professor Kobna Inim said this is a monthly change rate of 4.6%.
For the month of June 2022, producer price inflation stood at 38.0%, indicating that the rate is 4.7 percentage points higher than what was recorded in May 2022, which stood at 33.3%. From a monthly perspective, producer price inflation for the month of June 2022 stood at 4.6%, indicating that from the producer's perspective, between the month of May 2022 and June 2022, prices of goods and services went up by 4.6%. And from the manufacturing perspective, stood at 51.8%, distantly followed by mining and quarrying 25.5%, and again distantly followed by the utility subsector 1.2%. On a month-on-month basis, from a subsector perspective, we recorded the manufacturing subsector 6.8%, mining and quarrying 0.1%, and we did not record any change in the utility subsector for the month of June 2022.
That'll be all for business here on Newsnight. My name is Winston Taki. Sports is next after this break. Welcome back from the break, and it's time for your sports. After 10 months in action of newly crowned champions of the Ghana Premier League, Dr. Nate Ogum has quit.
The 44-year-old trainer, Dr. Prosper Nate Ogum, joined the Kumasi-based club Asante Kotoko from West African Football Academy 10 months ago. This reign ensured that the Red Army team were once again league champions of Ghana Top Flight Football competition after 7 years. Just as the excitement of the 2021-2022 league title triumphant was about to tie down and preparations for the next season, Nate Ogum decided to resign from the club. The University of Cape Coast lecturer was said to have left the league champions on Wednesday 20th July 2022 after a crucial meeting with the Kotoko board in the Garden City. According to reports, which is speculating the Ashanti regional capital, Coach Ogum's resignation 3 weeks was before the start of the Porcupine Warriors preseason due to a lack of transfer activity. Again, insiders within the club also believed that the coach was not happy about the sudden exit of some key players ahead of the African campaign. So far, Asante Kotoko have made no signings and have lost key midfielders like Brazilian Fabio Gama and Mudasiru Salifu, whilst Cameroonian Ituga Mbela, their best player last season, is expected to leave the club due to strong interest from European and North African clubs. Following numerous issues within the club, it is said that Dr. Prosper Nate Ogum met the club's management early Wednesday and informed them of his decision to leave with a year left on his contract. Prior to the coach's final hours with the club, it was reported that in a session of the media in Kumasi.
Okay, Dr. Prosper Nate Ogum is no more the coach of Kotoko. Let's find out some stats about him whilst in charge of the club. That will be on your screens. There you have it. He's played 34 matches in charge of Kotoko. He won 19, drew 10, and lost 5. He was crowned champion of the Ghana Premier. There you have it over there. Dr. Nate Prosper Ogum is a lecturer at the University of Cape Coast over there. Still on that topic, let's get to Kumasi. Earlier, we spoke to a Kumasi-based journalist, Nu Adams, who spoke about the situation in Kumasi following the resignation of Prosper Nate Ogum.
It is an absolute shocker. Most Kotoko fans are hurt. We know how Kotoko fans are really passionate and emotional about their club. Everybody is surprised that Dr. Prosper Nate has to resign, not that he's been sacked for poor performance or something. And the resignation is coming right after the club have won the Ghana Premier League, getting ready to get into the preseason for another season, and he's no more, or he's no longer the head coach of the club. The fans are disturbed, they are pained, they are hurt, and they are shocked as well.
my own investigation or from my own information that I've gathered.
Nur Adams is a Kumasi-based sports journalist speaking on the resignation of Prosper Nate Ogum as coach of Kotoko. That's your sports. Up next, entertainment.
Well, it's time for entertainment news. My name is Esiodua Akumia. Now, emceeing or hosting events is a great deal in Ghana and beyond. Earlier on Entertainment Review was media personality Nathaniel Atto, who shared a few tips on branding and grooming as an event host and MC.
This is what I tell everybody, especially when I get the opportunity. I do a lot of speaking engagements as well in our second cycle institutions and in our tertiary institutions. What I tell them about grooming and brand is, you see, branding is a process. It's a whole total package. It's not just the way you look. The way you look is paramount. And let me tell you the reason why. We're always talking about, oh, healthy living, so this suit was made for me a couple of years ago, and I still fit into it. So then it means that if I go beyond this, I can't put this on anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it means there's something about my discipline that I need to check, because originally that wasn't my frame. You understand me? And you see, so your health is taken care of because you're always looking at this. We're checking this, we're checking that. When I was about to get married, we went to the jewelry store and I spoke to the gentleman. I said, Charlie, guys, I want to expand this thing a little bit. And he said to me, no, I think you should keep it. We don't want to touch it. We don't want to tamper with it. If we do, I'm sure something is going to get messed up. Leave it like this. Besides, it'll help you to check your weight.
Ooh.
And truly, it's been like this. I take it off and it's here. You understand me? So the moment you start feeling uncomfortable, you know that, oh, Charlie, you've been a little playful and, So it all follows one scheme. And that scheme is that once you take care of you, once you take care of your image and you present that image to everybody else, it metaphors or it ripples on other aspects of what.
Now, for the next story, Canadian-born US singer Justin Bieber will be resuming his tour after being diagnosed with an illness which left him with partial facial paralysis. Last month, the singer announced he was pausing his tour because of Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, which left him unable to move half of his face. Justin Bieber resumes world tour. AEG Presents UK tweeted on Monday, now starting a run of European festivals in Italy on 31st July, then continue across South America, South Africa, the Middle East, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand, then back to Europe in 2023, the tweet reads. Now, details of postponed US shows coming soon. But that's it for entertainment news. My name is Esiodua Akumia. Bridget?
Thank you very much, Esiodua. International news is next. We're bringing you a couple of stories making waves on the international front.
Its military government has ordered Oliver Delgado, the spokesperson of the United Nations mission in Mali, to leave the country in 3 days, accusing him of making series of biased and unacceptable tweets. The situation centers on diplomatic role after 49 Ivorian soldiers arrested in Bamako were accused of mercenary activities 10 days ago. This comes after Togo initiated mediation efforts between Mali and Ivory to resolve the issue. In Italy, Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi has stepped back from resigning, calling for a new path to save his unity government from collapse. 6 days after the president rejected his resignation, he said it was impossible to ignore public calls to stay in office. He now faces a vote of confidence in his bid to revive his coalition. Wildfires are raging across Europe, where a heat wave has intensified drought conditions. Though temperatures have cooled in France,